Tip 1. Sewing a torn pocket in jeans. Here's a pair of jeans that's still in good condition, but the pocket has torn after some use. This is a fairly common problem, especially with jeans that have been worn for a long time or have heavy items in the pocket. Many people, when faced with this situation, often think about throwing the jeans away, even though the remaining fabric is still very durable and beautiful. That's actually quite wasteful, because even a small tear in the pocket can render the jeans unusable. Therefore, in this first tip, I will guide you on how to sew a torn pocket in your jeans at home. Below, I will guide you step by step. First, I took a rectangular piece of paper and folded it in half horizontally. Folding the paper creates a symmetrical shape, making the cutout shape look more balanced and beautiful. Next, I used a pen to draw half a heart shape along the crease of the folded piece of paper. When drawing, I only needed to draw half, because when unfolded, it would be a complete shape. Then, I used scissors to cut along the drawn line. After cutting, I unfolded the paper, and now I had a complete heart shape. With the paper template, I placed this heart shape on the prepared denim fabric. I adjusted the position and cut the fabric according to the paper template. After cutting, I had a heart-shaped piece of denim, ready to use to patch the torn pocket of my pants. After cutting out the heart-shaped piece of denim, I placed it over the torn pocket. I made sure the patch completely covered the tear. Next, I used a needle to temporarily secure the patch to the pocket. This securing prevents the fabric from shifting during sewing. Then, I prepared thread that was similar to or matched the original thread color of the jeans. Choosing the right thread color will help the stitches blend into the fabric, looking neater and less noticeable. I threaded the needle, pulled the thread evenly at both ends, and tied a knot at the end of the thread to prepare for sewing. When I started sewing, I started from the pointed part of the heart shape first. This is the easiest position to align and helps the stitches follow the shape evenly. I poked the needle from the inside of the pocket to the outside, creating the first stitch, then poked the needle back down close to the edge of the patch. Next, I wrap the thread around the needle once, then pull the needle straight out. This method of wrapping the thread helps the stitch hug the edge of the fabric tightly, creating a stronger and more even seam. For the second stitch, I continue by inserting the needle from the underside upwards, right next to the previous stitch. After the needle passes through, I wrap the thread around the needle again, then pull the needle straight out. In this way, each stitch is wrapped with thread once to ensure the patch is securely fixed to the pocket. I sew each small stitch evenly, following the outline of the heart shape. When I've sewn about half of the heart shape, I remove the temporary securing needle, as the patch is now secure enough not to shift anymore. Then, I continue sewing the rest of the heart shape, still using the same method. Poke up, poke down, wrap thread, pull straight out. When I reach the end, I tie a knot in the thread on the inside of the pocket to secure it, then trim the excess thread. Once completed, the patch is securely sewn, covering the tear while adding a subtle decorative touch to the jeans. The pocket can now be used normally again without worrying about the tear widening further. Tip number 2. Repairing a tiny tear on a shirt body with a small button. In this tip, I'll be fixing a tiny tear on the shirt body. To fix it, I'll prepare a small button, just the right size to cover the tear. Then, I'll use a marker to draw a circle around the outside of the button. Next, I'll use 2 needles to temporarily secure the circle at 2 symmetrical points. This securing method helps prevent misalignment during sewing, especially when working with many small stitches. Next, I'll thread the shirt body through an embroidery hoop. The embroidery hoop helps keep the fabric taut and flat, making it easier to observe the tier and sew more accurately. Thanks to the evenly stretched fabric, the stitches will be straight, neat, and won't wrinkle after completion. After securing with needles and the embroidery hoop, I'm ready to start sewing. First, I thread the needle from the underside of the shirt through the center of the round button. This is the first stitch to create a central support, helping to secure the button firmly and evenly. Next, I wrap the thread around the support about 10 to 15 times. Wrapping it so many times adds thickness and strength to the support, giving the shirt a more defined look. Then, for each button support, I perform the same steps. Thread the needle under the fabric, then loop the needle to the other side of the adjacent support, then thread the needle back up to the top, pulling the thread gently. I sew each support in turn, moving evenly around the circle of the support. In this way, each stitch will hold the button securely to the shirt body while completely covering the tiny tear underneath. Once the entire circle on the top is sewn in place, I turn the shirt right side up. On the inside, I carefully sewed a knot, tying the thread securely to prevent it from unraveling during washing or wearing. After tying the knot, I trimmed the excess thread. After securing the button placket and tying a knot on the underside, I continued by creating a decorative accent in the center of the circle to make the patch look nicer and more natural. I chose a thread color different from the fabric or the original thread color. First, I threaded the needle from the underside of the garment to the top, going right into the center of the circle. Once the needle emerged, I wrapped the thread around the needle shaft about 3 to 5 times. Wrapping the thread creates a raised stitch, making the center thicker and more visible. Once enough loops are wrapped, I gently hold the thread, then poke the needle back down into the underside of the fabric, pulling straight so that the loops of thread hug tightly together to form a neat stitch. This is the small accent in the center of the circle. Then, I continued to repeat this process. Thread the needle up, wrap the thread 3 to 5 times, poke the needle down, pull straight. Each stitch is placed close together to gradually fill in the inside of the circle. I patiently continued this process until the entire center was covered, creating a beautiful, even raised embroidery. When finished, the circle not only completely covered the tier, but also looked like a decorative hand-embroidered pattern on the shirt. Finally, I turned the shirt inside out, tied a secure knot, and trimmed the excess thread. At this point, the tiny tear had been neatly and securely repaired, looking very natural. Now, I'm going to sew another flower to add a finishing touch to the shirt. I thread the needle from the underside of the shirt and begin sewing each small petal. For each petal, I poke the needle up, pull the thread, then poke the needle down, creating gently curved stitches arranged around the center of the flower. I sew each petal one by one, evenly, not too elaborate, but ensuring the stitches are neat and secure. After sewing all the petals, I turn the shirt over, carefully tie a knot in the thread, and trim the excess thread. When finished, the shirt not only has its tier repaired, but also has a pretty little embroidered detail, looking like a decorative design rather than a visible repair. This is a great way to turn a small flaw on a shirt into a unique accent. The video ends here. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like. Don't forget to share it with your family and friends. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Goodbye. See you in the next video.